Your Excellency, Cyprus High Commissioner, distinguished members of Parliament, councillors, friends, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I'd like to thank our sponsors of the event, particularly Julian Carter, who is sitting here next to me, and Sir Alan Neil, who unfortunately is not well enough to be with us. We're sending our regards and our best wishes for his swift recovery. I really want to thank our sponsors because they made available these excellent facilities to us tonight. We mark this evening nearly 4 decades of military occupation and colonization in Cyprus. 39 years of anguish for the relatives of the missing, many of them here with us tonight. The utter injustice of division, ethnic cleansing, cultural genocide, religious desecration. These consequences are the pernicious legacy of Turkey's invasion of Cyprus in 1974. But the tragedy of this island is made even more profound because of the will of the international community, the will of the United Nations, has been repeatedly defied with complete impunity by successive Turkish governments for nearly 40 years, which makes today an anniversary of failure too, the failure of the international community to hold Turkey to account. Cyprus is up against an authoritarian and intolerant Turkish Prime Minister who has a problem with pluralism in his own country. Mr. Erdogan has shown no sign of engagement in relation to Cyprus, other than on his own terms, which would mean the island's total capitulation to Turkey's neo-Ottoman demands. The island's indigenous people, whatever their ethnic origin, and their wishes are the last thing on Mr. Erdogan's mind. This year, our plea to our friends in Parliament carries even greater urgency because this event takes place against the backdrop of the unprecedented economic crisis which has engulfed the island following the Eurozone's and the IMF's selective and unacceptable measures which have devastated Cyprus's economy and which some want to exploit in order to impose the permanent partition of the island. The United Kingdom remains a crucial player. It has historic treaty obligations in relation to Cyprus. It maintains military bases on the island, and it is Cyprus's partner in the European Union, in the United Nations, and in the Commonwealth. It is also a strategic ally of Turkey. As such, we believe that British parliamentarians are absolutely pivotal to the Cypriot diaspora's mission to deliver long-lasting unity and justice for Cyprus. So on behalf of our community, I express our profound thanks and appreciation to all of our friends in Parliament. And I appeal to you, gentlemen, I appeal to your sense of justice and to the ideals of liberty and democracy which symbolize our togetherness in this truly unequal struggle. Thank you very much for your help. I look forward to your contribution and the discussion tonight. Thank you very much. With those brief remarks, I'd like to invite our friends, members of Parliament, to make their own contributions to the discussion tonight. There will be an opportunity for contributions from the floor, as well as questions to our parliamentary friends. I know that there will be a vote later tonight, I think, so some of the members will have to come and go as their other duties demand. I know that both Julian Huppert and David have other commitments later, so I'm going to ask Julian to say a few words in the first instance, and then I will ask David to do the same. So Julian Huppert, who is Member of Parliament for Cambridge, the Liberal Member of Parliament for Cambridge. I met Julian last year, and he has made a point of turning up to our events ever since. He is a great friend of mine. He's a friend of George Peepers, Councillor George Peepers in Cambridge, who is meant to be here but hasn't arrived yet, who is the Deputy Mayor of Cambridge, and he does as an honour to be in that position. And I'm delighted that George introduced me to Julian. Julian has shown a definite interest in getting involved and engaging with us. I'm delighted you're here, Julian.
Well, thank you very much, Peter. It's a great honour to be described as a friend, and so thank you. It's a wonderful thing to be your friend, and a friend hopefully to Cypriots here. I do have the great luxury of representing the wonderful city of Cambridge, and it's a shame that George isn't here. I hope many of you know George. He's a wonderful man. I've got to know him over the last few years, and I'm particularly pleased he's now become Deputy Mayor of Cambridge. I think it's the first Cypriot Deputy Mayor that we've had in Cambridge. I know you've had others around the country. We hope next year he'll be the Mayor of Cambridge, which will be the natural succession. I hope the elections go the right way to make sure that that happens. I don't want to speak very much because actually Peter's captured so much of what really matters, and also before we have the votes and various other things that unfortunately hold us up the time, I'd rather hear from you because you all know the area far better than I do. To my shame, the only time I've ever been to Cyprus was to one of the military bases, landing there for a few hours and then leaving. I don't think I got to see the best of the island at all. But there are two things which are just so important I want to say a bit about. One is the short term. The economic problems that we have in Cyprus, and the fact that we absolutely do have to find ways of resolving it. We can't allow Cyprus to be sort of pushed off because of machinations within other bits of Europe. We can't allow it to be ignored by Britain. I know there is, I'm not going to try too heavily into the argument about Britain's involvement with Europe, but we should be involved with Europe, we should be involved with Cyprus. We should make sure we're talking only about trade, to try to make sure that we can help Cyprus trade out and become the prosperous nation that it really needs to be. And I also just wanted to say, and I agree with much of what you said about the long term. I don't remember 74, I wasn't born yet. But there is a fundamental principle that nobody should be gaining territory by military invasion, by occupation. It is simply not right to set immense control over it by bringing people in, importing a population till you have enough people to lay a claim. That's simply not a way that we can allow. I have to admit, Britain has a long history of occupying places via very much that method, but that doesn't make it all right, and the Turkish approach is simply not acceptable. It is absolutely right that we remember what has happened there and that we take steps about it. We do have to do more to reach a resolution. I was asked earlier whether I thought there would be a resolution in our lifetimes. I hope so. I hope it will be in the lifetimes of everybody in this room. It's not going to be easy, but it is absolutely right for you to hold us to account for what we do. And I accept that we need to do more to make sure we reach a resolution, that Turkey doesn't get away with occupying territory through military force, that no country ever gets that right. We return Cyprus to being a freer, fully united, peaceful area, and hopefully doing a lot better at trade. So thank you very much for inviting me and for inspiring me.
Thank you very much, Julian. I appreciate those words. Before I move on to David, I'd like to acknowledge the presence here of Tom Cox, former Member of Parliament, a great friend of the island, and he's here with us once again. Thank you very much. David.
Thank you very much.
David needs no introduction. He's a Member of Parliament in Enfield Southgate, which is a constituency with probably the largest constituency of Cypriot electors in the country.
Yeah, I think I have more Cypriot electors than Cypriot members of Parliament. But it's, as I said previously, and I'm just reflecting on what my 8 times probably been here previously of saying, am I going to say anything different? And that's the tragedy of it all in many ways, of coming here again and coming on the back of obviously people remembering earlier outside Parliament missing persons, of just the human loss and tragedy of the Cyprus problem, as we all call it, and how we all long to come here to be able to be celebrating a solution and a united, just settlement. And so it's always a tragedy coming back together again year after year and seeing what has changed. And what makes it even worse is that we and our colleagues are involved in lots of other areas of concern around human rights abuses, of injustices, of loss of property, land and people and of rights. And we reflect on those and indeed those countries where dramatic progress has been made. Next week, President Hussein saying the President of Burma will be coming over. That's a country which people wouldn't have thought in any way would have had any semblance of democracy and respect for human rights, and it's starting the small steps in that regard. And indeed, we're welcoming the President to these shores to be able to see how far he can go. There's a long way to go in that country, but wouldn't it be wonderful if, come September, as we welcome President Anastasiades, that it would have been on the back not just of looking at the immediate issues in economic crisis, but to be able to celebrate a united Ireland and proper respect for human rights. And what I reflect, and I know friends here, and Tom's friends has been involved for many years, and with Jim and others who do very much stand up on a cross-party basis for Cyprus, how what we need to be doing, and this reminds us more, is that we need to ensure that as energised as many colleagues are around other countries, I mentioned Burma, but other countries where there is and has been for so many years flagrant human rights abuse, that similarly so we are as active as we can be in relation to Cyprus. And I've spoken previously how we have almost this sort of, we have a Cyprus problem people talk about, people almost get used to tolerating what is unacceptable, and what this month reminding, and I know you rally in other ways, is this shouldn't be tolerated. We shouldn't get used to it. We shouldn't anyway have that sort of fatigue of thinking, well, this is as it is, because in a European nation, in a Commonwealth nation, in as part of a family of respect for human rights, this just shouldn't be accepted. We shouldn't tolerate the occupation of force. We shouldn't tolerate land forcibly taken and the lack of proper justice and respect for human rights. And so we need to be reminded, and that's why it's important that you all do come year on, year out in numbers to tell us, yes, and you show us the photos of those who are lost and where the basic knowledge of knowing the truth of where loved ones have gone is unacceptable. And it's totally unacceptable that this is tolerated. And you're right to remind us that we need to seek justice and truth and hopefully reconciliation based on United Nations resolutions. But in the way that we must, and we do as much as we can, stand up and speak up for Cyprus and speak to ministers, as much as we do that, we also need to ensure that we take practical measures to recognise that as, yes, the leaders are looking to have talks later in the autumn, that in the meantime and almost beyond, that we raise those issues which shouldn't just be subject to negotiation, that any country, any peoples that are concerned about respect for human rights and the rule of law and justice will be wanting to make progress. And that includes, and indeed, you mentioned, sorry to arrive late, you mentioned the whole issues of liberty and democracy, and that this country, has stood tall in those areas, and it should stand tall in the areas, particularly given our relationship with Cyprus, given the representation here of UK citizens and constituents and others. We should stand tall in standing up for these areas, to say it is intolerable what's happening for Famagusta. It's intolerable for those people who want to return with a lack of respect for us. It's intolerable, and it's something that should continue. And so I will be joining with others to make sure that we indeed remind Prime Minister, as we've done previously, that every opportunity he needs to be making them the case to Turkey that this is not acceptable. That we shouldn't have a frozen village that's frozen out of time in what should be a modern, civilised way of looking at things. And also, indeed, the missing persons, which is highlighted again for us today, that shouldn't be tolerated, that there is information out there. There are European court judgments that need to be followed and complied with. And we need to make sure that happens. And yes, when we hear those voices in Taksim Square, the people voices who are speaking out against the Turkish government, bravely speaking out against authoritarian rule or heavy-handedness, Similarly so, the same application of respect for human rights and freedom must apply to the missing persons and relatives to their event, and must apply to the Villagers and Association representative around Famagusta, and must apply to the most heavily militarised place pretty much on the planet, as is northern Cyprus. And it must apply because it makes sense politically, it makes sense from a basic human rights, it also makes sense, and that's obviously particularly relevant, from an economic point of view and a sustaining point of view for the island. And all that must come together. So we are looking very practically at wanting to do what we can to raise those voices, and not just simply go in line with the talks that will hopefully take place soon and will lead to real results, but also make sure that we don't tolerate the intolerable. But also, just in conclusion, there is a lot of practical work to do, because obviously since we've last here, we've had the awful economic crisis in Cyprus, and we do need to obviously realise that as a diaspora here, you're very concerned about that, and that's why with the National Federation, we're really working very hard. And I have to just not sort of take issue, but to say that it's not an issue of our relationship with Europe. Actually, it's Britain that has stood tall with Cyprus in this crisis, and it's very marked that it is the British government that was there, the Treasury officials were out there to make sure that, yes, they could ensure that there was an appropriate deal could be made that could protect as best as possible likey investors and depositors. And it is indeed ministers who are working very hard practically. I mean, this isn't to say in any way that the situation is in any way perfect, but working very practically, and we can witness that in terms of the time that ministers have taken to meet with us, to look at very practically a package that they can provide as much support as possible. And yes, work to see what potential trade and investment opportunities there can be down the line, to make sure that we support Cyprus in these times of need, and make sure that Britain, of all nations, is a friend, and a friend that's needed when it's very much needed today. So yes, we need to do that practically in the immediate issues around the economy, but also the very much dear issues that we all care about, which is return human rights and respect for freedoms in Cyprus.
Very much, David, and we really appreciate all of your work. I know you served as chair of the Parliamentary group for Cyprus until recently, and I want to thank you for all you did during that period, and I want to thank you also for your involvement in recent months in enabling us to meet with the ministers that you mentioned in relation to the economic crisis in Cyprus. Thank you very much. I would like to invite some contributions from the floor at this point. My expectation was that these two were going to engage in debate with you, but they now have to run off.
We'll try and bring others back.
We may have a minute or so. But a couple of minutes.
Okay, a couple of minutes. A couple of minutes for
responses.
For any responses or contributions, keep them short so that they can hear you. If you could tell us who you are, please.
Okay, I'm Tony Bouros. I'm a member of the National Federation recently, and represent my parents come from 2 villages that are in the occupied land. I'd like to say hello to Tom very briefly, because years ago we were on committees together and he was very helpful, just as you are. I take on board what you 2 MPs have said and so on. But it seems to me, as a British-born Cypriot over here, our government, as you said, has let us down tremendously. They seem to have acted very quickly in the economic crisis that happened 3 months ago, but not in the human crisis that happened 39 years ago. And the Magna Carta was signed as a good basis of law and order. This is not reflecting you, gentlemen. This is reflecting the government. Magna Carta was, most of those in England are based on the Magna Carta, and I believe the treaty that was signed by Greece, Britain and Turkey, I don't think personally, many people in this room would think that Britain has let us down on that score. So all I wanted to point out is make that point to you, and it seems that oil rules rather than olive oil. Unfortunately, we haven't got any oil in Cyprus, and I think that's where we've been let down. Thank you. Thank you.
One more, please. One more. Yes, please. Could you tell us who you are, please?
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chair, and also for the contribution on human rights. I'm very I'm passionately interested in Cyprus because I'm deeply involved in Northern Ireland, and I see there are parallels. You have two former massive colonial powers, the Ottoman Empire and the British Empire, sailing into a neighbouring island, dispossessing the people to whom that land belongs, and claiming it for themselves. Now, all I would ask is for Cypriots in this country to put, and I will try to do my best, to put huge pressure on this Parliament, this heart of our democracy, to bring about much more pressure from the British government on Turkey, because Cyprus is a Commonwealth country. We have that responsibility to support them as best we can. There is no comparison between the level and the advanced democracy and the level of education of Cypriot people and the people who have taken over the north of their island, who are, I better not go into a description of what I consider the Turkish people to be. It's not their fault. They are undereducated and they are not as advanced as the Cypriot people. Germans, too, know nothing about Cyprus because their children don't need to learn about Cypriot or British history. When I speak to Germans, I tell them that the Cypriot people, the ratio, yes, right here. Just to finish that sentence, the ratio of Cypriot graduates to the population is the highest in the whole of the European Union. And that kind of fact should be spread around. But it is for this Parliament to put much more pressure on Turkey to bring about a political settlement, and that can only be the withdrawal of a foreign power from your country.
Thank you very much, Roy. I really appreciate your contribution. I should say that we have cross-party support within Parliament. We have the Conservative Member of Parliament, David, we have Liberal Democrat Julian Hubbard, and we have Jim Sheridan, the member of the Labour Party, and his constituencies in Scotland. He must be very proud of Murray, because he did very well, and we're all proud of him. Jim, do you want to say a few words at this point?
Yeah.
Thank you very much for being with us.
As I said, I would like to say that the Cypriot problem is far more important than Northern Ireland, but I would be telling a lie simply because when you're in opposition you can choose when to vote and not when to vote. So I don't think that, well, I don't think my vote is needed anyway, and we've been told we're on a one-line vote. So unfortunately the guys who are running the country have to go and vote and I don't. But can I say that just in terms of housekeeping, I can just speak briefly about the group, the parliamentary group in Cyprus. We were under quite a significant amount of pressure. Some of you may have been at meetings complaining that we were too biased towards the Cypriot, the Greek Cypriot, and not paying much attention to the Turkish Cypriot side. And we took that on board and we made some changes to the group. We've been a new secretary. And the reason I'm saying that is quite simple, because it proved to be an absolute nightmare, and the person who took over, they just continually tried to disrupt the group and just make matters worse. And I know David Burrows is far too modest for me to say this, and I'll need to go and wash my mouth out after supporting a Tory, but he's been extremely good, and I have to say, Peter, he has been under tremendous pressure back in his constituency from the person that took over the role of secretary. She has made his life extremely difficult. But thankfully, she's moved on. We convinced her that she wasn't the best person for the job, and we got someone else to move in, which is Jim Dobbin, as a Labour MP, so we are delighted with that. Having said that, I'm sorry that I'm now becoming a veteran of these events, and apologise in advance for it. It's a title I wouldn't like to hold as a veteran of these events, but unfortunately that's where we are. And I hear people talking about the financial difficulties, and I'm extremely sorry that Cyprus has been caught up in this austerity situation, and I sincerely hope that you get yourselves out of it. And I don't think the IMF and others are being extremely helpful in trying to help you through in terms of some of the demands, extreme demands that have been putting on your government. On the question of Turkey, I take the view that I think that Turkey have enough problems of their own just now in terms of human rights and in terms of the riots that were taking place recently. And also the pressures that's on their borders with what's happening in Syria in terms of them taking in refugees. And I would have thought now would have been an ideal window of opportunity for Turkey to look after itself and leave Cyprus alone to go on with it. And I think that's the kind of arguments that we need to pursue. David Burrows is absolutely right. We do meet on a regular basis with the ministers to talk through Cyprus, but it's sometimes it's frustrating for us, but it must be 100 times more frustrating for you because you're the people that's involved in it. But we do meet with the European Minister on a regular basis. And the last time we met with him, and I don't want to raise hopes in any way, but the last time we met with him, he was far more optimistic now than what has been for some time. So we just hope that that develops into some practical changes that we can put pressure on our own government and indeed the Turkish government to come to some sort of satisfactory conclusion. And I know for a number of years that the Turkish government haven't taken negotiations seriously, even under the threat of not being allowed into the European market. There is a school of thought now that given the state that Europe's in and the euro, that maybe Turkey doesn't want to be into the European market, but that's another argument. I think we need to keep that pressure on. The other thing I think that's important as well is the minerals that's been found off the coast of Cyprus. And I'm genuinely concerned that this could be a diversion for Turkey to interfere in Cyprus' problems in terms of minerals. And I sincerely hope that the British government takes a firm line in saying quite clearly to Turkey and indeed others that the minerals found off the coast of Cyprus belong to the people of Cyprus and no one else. And I really don't think it should be up for negotiations to pacify the Turks, that they should have in any way some sort of percentage or otherwise of the minerals that's found there. And I just hope that we follow that through. Just finally, Peter, on the question of missing people, I'm on the Council of Europe, and I think I've said to people before that we are currently embarking on a report about missing persons, not just in Cyprus but throughout the Caucasus and Russia and various other places. But the one, and I can say the one I've paid perhaps more attention to, as I'm the rapporteur on the committee, and the one we've paid the most attention to is the situation in Cyprus. We will be producing our report at the next European Council, which is in October. I have to say, without giving anything away, I think Cyprus has come out of this report, and we worked alongside the International Committee for Red Cross, who were extremely helpful giving us the information. I think Cyprus and the Cypriot authorities have come out extremely well compared to other countries in the sense of giving people information about where their loved ones are, where they've been buried, etc., etc. The Cypriot authorities have been extremely helpful, and unfortunately you can't say that for other countries who have been, the exact opposite, have been obstructive in terms of trying to get information from where people's loved ones are, whether they're buried or else or whatever. But we are working on that, and hopefully we can get some sort of conclusion to that. So as I say, we're launching that report on October, and hopefully we would like to name and shame some of the countries. Unfortunately, that's not the way that we do things. My way, that's the kind of thing that I would do. But what we're also trying to do in the Council of Europe is put pressure on the individual countries in the Council of Europe, including Turkey, to say to their delegates that you have a responsibility to go back to your national government, not to get involved in the problems of 1974, but to say quite clearly, we have a responsibility to give the information to the relatives and the friends of the missing people, and that's what we're trying to do, and that's what we're trying to remind the delegates from Turkey and indeed other countries as well about the missing people, because it's never ever going to go away, and we cannot ignore it. And we keep saying to people, you know, you can't ignore this forever. At some stage, you're going to have to give us the information that we require, and it would be better doing it now so we can move on, because that's the important thing. But just in terms of places, and this place, I mean, you have a lot of friends in here in terms of parliamentarians. It's unfortunate not too many here tonight, but there's been other things that have been going on. And delighted that you brought the son with you. That's perhaps the reason why a number of my colleagues are away somewhere else. But there is it. But all I should say is that anything that we can do as a group, as individuals, call us anytime, contact us, and if you think there's anything that we can do to try and bring some sort of satisfactory conclusion to the island of Cyprus, then we're happy to do it. We're here to help you, and I just ask you to make sure that you use us and use us well. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you very much, Jim, and thank you for everything that you do in Parliament, and thank you for everything that you have been doing within the parliamentary group of Cyprus as well. I know there are some challenges there, but I know that your contribution and that of others ensured that we ended up with a fair outcome. I'd like to welcome Caroline Noakes, Member of Parliament, Conservative Member of Parliament for Romsey and Southampton North, who has just joined us. I've known Caroline for a while, and I'm delighted that she's here with us. And even though she claims to be a bit of a novice as far as Cyprus is concerned, I know that she is well placed to add her voice to our struggle. So I'm delighted that Caroline is here. And I would like to ask her to say a few words, and hopefully she will stay with us so that she can hear your contributions as well. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Peter, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am very conscious as a Member of Parliament for the City of Southampton that we have a large and active Greek Cypriot community, and it is a real pleasure to see some of them represented here this evening. As Peter has alluded, I do not profess to be an expert on Cyprus. But what I do know is that I can recognise an injustice when I see one. And I can recognise a country that for 40 years nearly has been struggling for justice, for the families of those who have been missing to be given the information that they do not just deserve, they have a right to. And I firmly believe that Turkey has a duty to now start discussions, to uphold its UN obligations, and to provide for those families the closure and the information that they are very much seeking and have absolutely a right to have. I apologise. This evening is, as ever, one of those jumbled up parliamentary evenings where we have votes running all night long, where I gather the plumbing of the wonderful palace we're in has failed. And so I apologise if there are few of my colleagues here and if I have to rush off the next time we have a division. But certainly I will stay as long as I can to hear the views of those represented, and I would just like to take this opportunity to thank you for annually taking the trouble to come into Parliament and to make sure that we hear the message that those missing Cypriots are not forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Caroline. And thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I think it's great to have you. Could we have some contributions from the floor, please? And any points that you would like to make? I should say that we have here tonight Cypriots from London, but we have Cypriots from further afield as well, from Birmingham, from Nottingham, from Coventry, and other places, and I welcome them all. I'm delighted that you're all here. One of them is my friend here.
Start maybe, I'm from Lincoln, and I'm proud to say I'm a member of the Conservative Party. And I'm part of it and part of the committee as well regionally. However, do we have, as part of Conservatives, a policy on Cyprus, a national policy for the problem of Cyprus as a Conservative party in which we can move forward, in your view?
Oh, that's a wonderful question.
Thank you.
Who does never profess to be an expert on our foreign affairs policy.
I think it's a slightly unfair question.
Yeah, you know, like Kane saying, and I was a novice on the issue of Cyprus. You know, I can't answer. I should be better briefed, shouldn't I, coming to a meeting like this evening. However, we should have, and I know that within the party there's a very active Conservative Friends of Cyprus, and certainly I firmly believe that what we must be doing is using our role in government to exert pressure via the UN and through treaty obligations with Turkey to get an answer. And I'm sure that is what the Foreign Office is doing.
I mean, rather than ask questions here, Caroline, what I would like is contributions at this point, because Caroline is not a minister. I mean, she's a member of Parliament. She's a friend of ours. But I think what we need to hear is contributions that will inspire Caroline to get more involved and also to act as an influencer within Parliament. Really. So, do I see any? Tom Cox, former member of Parliament.
Peter, your opening remarks, as everyone in this room knows, summed up very clearly that after 39 years, the injustice for the Republic of Cyprus and the Greek Cypriot community is still there after 39 years. Now, all of us in this room know the many attempts that were made by different presidents of the Republic to try to get an honourable settlement. And that, to me, Peter, really wasn't impossible. It was impossible, as report after report has shown, and it's all on the record, because of the attitude for many, many years of Ralph Danktash. That's why there was no progress. And what I would like to hear this evening, and possibly our Member of Parliament can tell us, where on the political agenda in the coalition, or indeed in the Labour Party, is Cyprus today? Because we know in that region there is turmoil, there is Syria, there is Egypt. Today there have been bomb attacks in the Lebanon. Now, are we going to be told, Peter, oh, Cyprus is a very, very important issue. We know the injustices, but there are more pressing issues at the moment that we've got to be involved in. So I would really like to know where Cyprus is on the political agenda. Is it somewhere, or is it high on the list? Because I'll give two examples, what deeply concerns me. There was an article very recently in the Times, and it was by Jack Straw. And Jack Straw was the Foreign Secretary for many, many years. And what Straw was saying in this article, he didn't refer very much to Cyprus, but he said the unrest in Turkey, the only way to resolve that is by offering, as quickly as possible, membership of the European Union to Turkey. The other thing I would say, Peter, in the debate in the Lords on the Queen's speech, there were members of the Lords, and they were Conservative members. They were talking about Cyprus, but how they described it was the Turkish Federation of Northern Cyprus. So to them, already the occupation and the occupied areas are no longer part of the Republic of Cyprus. They now belong to the Turkish Federation of Northern Cyprus. And I'm sorry to say that I haven't seen the British government, or indeed the Labour Party, making any comments rebuffing what the members of the Lords said. So Peter, our lady friend at the back, mentioned about the role of Parliament. She mentioned about the fact that Cyprus is an honourable member of the Commonwealth. For many years, Cyprus is a member of the European Union, so its credentials are all there. But, and the reference, I think, by Jim to the Council of Europe. I was a member of the Council of Europe for 25 years, and I can remember, and possibly you can, Peter, I still have the reports at my home, when Geoffrey Finsberg, who then became Lord Finsberg, and although he was a Conservative, as our parliamentary colleague knows, irrespective of that, you do build up friendships with people, and you work together with people. And Geoffrey Finsberg presented a very extensive report. I don't know if the High Commissioner was then in Strasbourg, but it was discussed. It was overwhelmingly supported, but nothing ever happened. Also at that time, and possibly again the High Commissioner remembers this, there was the Cuckoo report by a Spanish deputy who was scathing about the attitude of the mainland Turkey and the Turkish Cypriot administration. Again, nothing was done. When I was a member here, I saw Tony Blair on 4 occasions. After the first one, Peter, I realised I was wasting my time. He just was not interested. But people used to say, Tom, go and see Blair. Make sure Blair understands. Blair understood, but he didn't want to do anything. And that, Peter, concluding my remarks, I hope we're not going to feel, when we go away from here, well, what we've had, it was nice to see different members of Parliament here showing their support, but at the end of the night, are we going to leave this building, Peter, and really feel, yes, yes, something will certainly happen. Now that there have been the discovery of gas and oil around the island of Cyprus, is that now going to be the trade point to get Turkey involved? Chris, my dear friend, who's a Cypriot, showed me a report that was published in a Turkish newspaper, wasn't it?
Cyprus.
Where apparently the Americans are now willing to do a deal that brings Turkey on board for a settlement in return for a share of the gas and oil deposits. Is that true? Peter, you and Andreas and many colleagues here have spent years and years of your life trying to get an honourable settlement that the people of Cyprus, even after 39 years, are entitled to respect. But I have to say, Peter, and you know I've been to many meetings, I will be at the rally on Sunday, but Peter, deep down in my heart, I don't see, sadly, any real progress.
Thank you very much, Tom. I appreciate everything you've done all these years. You've been on our side. You've been a consistent supporter. You've been a passionate advocate for this island and for our community. And that is hugely appreciated and highly valued by all of us. And everything you say resonates with so many of us here. But I want to be an optimist, you know. And I think had we thought that Cyprus would forever remain divided and occupied, we wouldn't be here tonight. And our belief is that Cyprus will eventually be reunited, that Cyprus will one day be free. And this is why we're here, this is why we carry on with this struggle. And we do so in the knowledge that we have great friends like you, and other parliamentary friends, including Caroline, who's new to the cause, but nevertheless spoke with clarity and purpose. As I said in my introductory remarks, this is an unequal struggle. It's a struggle that we can win if we remain dedicated to the ideals that I mentioned: liberty, democracy, freedom. And these are values that I think we share in this room and outside of it. And for as long as we have supporters like you and others in this house, we will continue to fight for what we believe to be right. I know that there are others who want to contribute, and I see Mr. Lomas there. Could you tell us who you are, please?
My name's Alan Lomas. I've lived in Cyprus. I'm a British citizen. I've lived in Cyprus for about 7 years after retiring from Shell. I spent 35 years getting oil and gas out of the ground. So about a year and a half ago, I offered what small skill I might have to the Cyprus government to try and help them to make the best out of this treasure which you have discovered off the shores. Can I just start by saying that I understand completely the tragedy and the emotion, and I want to pay a huge respect to all of you here and offer my condolences for all that you've been through. I've tried to learn a little bit about both sides of this discussion, and I still don't understand it. Let me just make that absolutely clear. So I'm also, like Caroline, a novice, but I do want to help. And I just want to put a glimmer of hope on the table, and I want to be an optimist, and I've said this before. And I do believe, actually, that the recent change of government, the recent economic the problems that we've had in Cyprus, and they have been real, believe me, I live there, and I see the pain on the faces of ordinary people who are living through the economic crisis today. But I believe that provides a real opportunity to look for different ways of solving this. And let me just, very briefly if I may, suggest what that might be. Europe is desperately short of energy, alternative energy supplies. That other people here are looking other ways, and that gives you some leverage. Not just because you have discovered gas off your own shores, but because, as always and for the last thousands of years, you are geopolitically and geographically perfectly positioned to be able to be a place where gas could be gathered from all around this troubled area and brought to Europe. Cyprus represents somewhere at the very bottom, the toe of Europe, if you like, which is very, very close to enormous reserves of gas. And I'm not going to mention all those places. They're all troubled places. They're all places which at the minute don't know how to export their gas. Yeah, so it's not just the gas that you have off your own island, which I totally agree with is your gas. Yeah, it's the opportunity that you would have if only we could resolve a few little minor issues which would allow Limassol and Cyprus to become an energy hub to bring not just the 3 or 4 TCF, which has been discovered off your own shores, but the 80, 90, maybe 200 TCF of gas, which is trapped all around the Levant by strife and by the fact that it can't get out towards the south. There is a massive opportunity. So just in closing, I would encourage you to be optimistic, to recognize that despite all the pain of the last 40 or 50 years, if only some form of compromise could be reached, if only it would be possible for Greek Cypriots to imagine there might be a way in which they could trust their northern neighbours, because that's what it would take, and the resolution of the problem, there would be an enormous economic opportunity for you for years and years to come. And just to close, Europe today doesn't make money out of the gas under its own boundaries. It makes money by transporting gas around the European Union. That is how money is made. That's how you can do it for 40 or 50 years. I just encourage you to think positively about the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Contributions, and I've seen them here and anything else.
Before I ask a question of this gentleman from Shell, can I say hello to Tom? And I see your passion is undiminished. And 21 years ago, for your information and everyone else's information, Tom and I and half a dozen other MPs, some are no longer with us, toured America, you remember Tom? And your passion was so strong then and has not undiminished. Please continue in the House of Lords. The question. Since you have alluded the beautiful opportunities that exist with this energy in the Cyprus area, don't you think that Turkey's appetite for Cyprus has now become really strong and will not let go?
I'm not sure I could or should comment on that, but can I just make one thing clear? I don't work for Shell. I've retired from Shell. I'm an independent consultant who's offered my help to the Cyprus government. I'm only encouraging you to think alternatives, that's all.
I think we'll leave it at that. I'd like to take contributions. Turkey11, and then...
Turkey11, a Cypriot journalist. There are some indications, Mr. Chairman, of an increased interest in Cyprus, on the Cyprus issue. We have, of course, a new government in Cyprus with a president who has been identified up to now with a decisive position on Cyprus. The United States, within the framework of their general interest in the Middle East, from what they say, they are willing to help any new effort for the solution of the Cyprus problem. Britain, of course, we would like it to do much more than what they are doing, and I'll come back to that. And then Europe has to, and is in a position to play an important, not to say a decisive role. Now, new talks are planned to start in the autumn. I take it as our first priority, with the help of MPs, of course, our friends within the Parliament, to exert the maximum possible influence on the British government. They are in a position to play a very, very important role, not only by itself, but by themselves, but also mainly, I suppose, more importantly, because of their special relation with the United States. So specifically, could we just plan from now a kind of delegation of MPs with the help of the Federation to see the British government at the highest possible level. And I wonder, I would like to come back to an idea which was put forward, I think, 2 years ago by Tom Cox himself. Congressmen in the United States, House of Representatives, and generally, I suppose, the political world there as a result of new developments and also as a result of the activities of the Cypriot community there. They are willing, or there are indications that they can help. Why not? An attempt for a kind of cooperation between parliamentarians in this country and congressmen in the United States. Perhaps we could think of that and see how specifically we would manage to do that. It will be a new thing, a new idea. And according to the response that there may be, perhaps we think quite high. Why not meeting with the Turkish Prime Minister, for instance, if it is a high-level delegation of parliamentarians and congressmen? Well, these are just some ideas, people.
Thank you very much, Turkey11.
Sorry, I did not catch your name.
Adam Lomas.
I know you said you're not political, but what you brought up is like a can of worms.
I understand that.
It's just, first of all, you said it's, one has to find a compromise with Turkish Cypriots so we can gain the benefits of the gas deals, but it's not Turkish Cypriots that one's trying to find a compromise with, or needs a compromise. It is with Turkey, and it's up to Greek Cypriots to be able to trust that situation in which they're left open. Also, the other part seems to be saying that gas is a hostage to the Republic of Cyprus finding a solution. It is not that the rights of Cypriot waters are there. In other words, that's being held hostage to a solution that Turkey can agree with. And this is the condition of Cyprus, and this is where the British government should be pressurising, that the Republic of Cyprus can come out of this conundrum. It finds no benefits wherever it turns. So gas is not a benefit, but the British government should be pressurising a bit more on this with Turkey. Sorry, it's just that you brought it up.
No, I understand what you're saying. I'm just opening everybody's eyes to the opportunity. Because gas is a major leverage in this world, sadly or not.
Thank you very much. I'd like to welcome Andy Love, Member of Parliament for Edmonton, who's just joined us. Andy represents Edmonton, a constituency with a large number of Cypriots, and we're delighted that he's here with us. And welcome. I did see, I'm going to take one more contribution from down there. Could you tell us who you are, please?
My name is and I'm a British Cypriot. I think it's fair to say that high-level talks are not the way forward. They don't work, they haven't worked for the last 40 years. And I think a more viable alternative to getting discussion on the table is grassroots initiatives. So engaging with the young people, there's a massive Greek Cypriot community here with lots of young people. There's a massive Turkish Cypriot community over here with lots of young people. And I think that everyone should be getting behind these two communities and, pushing young people to engage with each other, to kind of bring down these barriers, maybe take a delegation to Cyprus as well, and to, get some really positive grassroots feelings on the ground established, and get some momentum going from there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other contributions from any of our younger members? Please. So younger.
My name is Anna Prokopio. I don't live in London. I'm not a British citizen. I'm here more as an observer. So I come from the academia. So I think I'm slightly more cynic maybe than.
What's your name?
Anna Prokopio.
Thank you.
I'm going to be making some comments more than I don't really have any questions, regular questions. I think the main problem that we back in Cyprus see lies primarily with the Cyprus government. Because I hear people here just talking about how we should put pressure on the British government, on the Parliament, on the House of Lords, etc., to help Cyprus. But the main question I think remains, what does Cyprus want? Do we know what we want? I mean, what does this help goes towards to? I mean, do we want pressure on Turkey to sit around the negotiating table? Do we want them to come to an agreement on the natural gas deal? Do we want human rights to be upheld? Do we want a federation? We don't really know what we want as Cypriots, I think. And that's the first question we need to ask ourselves.
I think we want
our government.
We want all those things. All those things. We want all those things.
I'm just posing the questions. Okay, I'm not making. I think the main problem lies with the Cypriots and the Cyprus government to decide exactly what kind of help do we need from the British. Now, secondly, as people respond to incentives, I think governments respond to interest. So what we need to put on the table when we ask anything from the British government, as Mr. Cox rightly said, is not a question of them not knowing what is right and wrong. It's not wanting to do what is right in the way we see it. So what we need to place the emphasis on is basically what kind of profit or benefit would the British have by assisting the Cyprus government in reaching a certain objective. So natural gas is one given on the table now. The British bases and security considerations, bearing in mind that Syria is about to collapse sooner rather than later. I think this consideration should be firmly placed on the table. Now, as far as sharing any of our natural gas deposits with the Turks, I agree with the lady here. It's not the Turkish Cypriots we really need to be concerned about. Personally, as an analyst, I keep the Turkish Cypriots mostly out of the equation because they don't really matter. It's Turkey and Cyprus. Not matter, I'm talking in terms of policy. I have a lot of Turkish Cypriot friends, don't get me wrong, sir, because I see you've got a very young That's not what I meant. I meant that in a policy, high policy level, who you're dealing with is really the Turkish government. And in business deals, win-win works. But when you have to deal with Turkey, and we see how Turkey has been dealing with its own citizens, just as we speak in Taksim Square, and a lot of my friends are actually there at this moment, I think we need to understand that the dialectic, at the stage of dialectic we are with Turkey is totally different. So that's a really big problem. How do you really come to a deal with someone which is not a democratic state, which is a truly authoritarian state, whose appetite is really getting greater with the discovery of natural gas deposits? I think that's a very, very serious consideration. And security-wise, the minority in Cyprus really is not the Turkish Cypriots. It's the Greek Cypriots vis-a-vis the Turks, because it's the Turkish army which is occupying the island. So theoretically, it's a good way of thinking things out. But I think we really need to understand that Turkey is totally different from Cyprus on a democratic development stage, and that creates a very big problem when we're negotiating with them.
You've made some interesting points, you've made some slightly controversial points as well. You've spoken in fairly stark terms. I'm disinclined to respond other than to say that I think we know what we want. I think we want the Turkish army to leave, it's quite clear. We want Cyprus to be left free so that the Cypriots themselves, can determine its future. And that includes all Cypriots, irrespective of their ethnic origin. The negotiation in terms of the internal structure of the island will be decided by the communities themselves. But it's difficult to negotiate when you have a gun on your head by an occupying power. And that has been the legacy of Turkey's occupation on the island. So the work that we do here is vital. I mean, you said that Turkey doesn't want to engage. It's an authoritarian state. It's not a democratic state in the way that we understand it. It's certainly a powerful state there. It's got huge military power. Cyprus has nothing like that. So what is it that we have to do? I mean, as Cypriots in the diaspora, I think that what we have to do is use whatever influence we have to exert pressure on our representatives in Parliament so that they can influence decisions that are made in the policy of this country. So this is what we're doing here. I see that there are other contributions. Michael Kashis and then Basis.
I want to bring into the knowledge of the honorable members of the Parliament an incident which happened recently in Cyprus between the Dean of the University of Cyprus and an imam. Cyprus visited Carpathia Peninsula when he was approached by an imam who said to him, "Look, you are Dean, you are a very educated person, Dean of the university, but Cyprus soon will become an Islamic country. If we look at the numbers of the settlers who are in Cyprus now, in the hundreds of thousands, it makes sense what he said. I don't want to add any comments. It just depicts clearly what the intentions of Turkey are about Cyprus. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Vassos.
My friends, for 39 years now we've been hearing what you are like, it's intolerable, it's unacceptable, and we have to do more. We've been trying to do more. We even tried the carrot and the stick, few MPs said. Obviously Turkey doesn't understand. And what we want is freedom. What we want is the Turkey to take the 40,000 troops and go back to Turkey and allow the Turkish Cypriot and the Greek Cypriots to find solution. President Christofias, he came to some kind of an understanding with Talat. But he couldn't go all the way. He stopped halfway. And why? Because the deep country, the state of Turkey, it will not allow Talat to progress and found solution. So whatever we say here now, unless Turkey decides it's time to solve the problem, Cyprus problem will be there in 30, 40 years. What he wants? To give half of the oil so he can give us a solution? No, Mr. Erdogan. The gas and the oil and the paraffin, whatever they're going to find there, it belongs to the Turkish Cypriot, to the Greek Cypriot, Armenians, Maronites, and Latins. Not to Turkey. Thank you.
We've had a fair number of contributions and we've had a lively debate so far. I'd like to invite, there's one more. I'll take one more then, and then I'll invite you to respond to some of the points made. Tell us who you are, please.
My name is Mary Cipriano. I'd like to say that it seems to me that Turkey is sitting pretty in Cyprus. It has invaded, it has changed the population structure of the island. We now have, over the 39 years, 2 more generations of Turks born there from settlers, from the hundreds of thousands of settlers. Turkey is not going to leave of its own accord unless it's made to leave. Now, who is going to make Turkey leave? America, Britain, its allies. We've heard what Mr. Cox was saying, and no British government has ever done anything to put any kind of pressure on Turkey. I would like to ask any MPs who are still here what action, if any, they are prepared to take to try and influence the present British government in its attitude towards Cyprus and Turkey.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask Alhamdulillah, MP, who is a bit of a veteran as far as Cyprus is concerned, to respond to your questions, some of the points which have been raised so far. Alhamdulillah.
Perhaps I should stand and, rather than make a standard speech at this occasion, I think you've probably had a number of those this evening. I thought I might try and just pick out some of the issues that have been raised in the brief time that I've been here. So I do apologise to you for being late. I am a labouring cooperative member of Parliament, and the cooperative part asked me to attend a meeting along the corridor. So I've been being grilled for 3/4 of an hour, and so I'm hoping you'll give me a much easier time than I've had so far this evening. But what I'd like to pick up, the first contribution I heard when I arrived was a young lady at the back speaking about the role of youth. And the first thing I think that everyone will recognise is, of course, our young people are the future. And the attitude they strike towards all of these issues will be critically important to trying to find a way forward that's successful rather than all the failures that we've talked about for the last 39 years. And I think that it is absolutely critical that our young people engage with this in whichever way they find most appropriate. But I would say that acting as part of civil society can really bring benefits to the Cyprus situation. Now, I don't believe, I'm a politician, and I do believe you have to bring all the forces on all sides to the negotiating table in order to find a solution. So I'm conventional in that way, but I'm very much of the view that civil society in all sorts of ways can play a formative role in bringing us all of the different negotiating parties to the table. And indeed, if we look at current events in other countries, then we can see the role that civil society can play and does play. And I think that perhaps that's been one of the things that hasn't been as much in play throughout the last 39 years as it should have been. We talk a lot about confidence building measures, we talk about reaching across the green line, we talk about various initiatives, but actually mobilising ordinary people through the civil society organisations, through our young people, would be a way of galvanising opinion on both sides. But of course, as others have said, if we were to leave the Greek Cypriot community and the Turkish Cypriot community to resolve this matter, it probably would have been resolved a long time ago. The complexities of what is happening in the north makes it difficult for the Turkish Cypriot community to speak solely on behalf of people in the north of the island, and of course we have in the background the international community, but in regard to finding a solution, particularly Turkey. And that brings me on to the lady over here, who I think raised the two, I think everybody, there would be a consensus in this room that the two major issues that we have to deal with to find a solution is the role of the United Kingdom, and it's both its historic role but also its treaty role as a guarantor power, and indeed in all sorts of other ways.